This is a Blaze Radio production.
We're covering Who's on Deck,
hitting the ice on the hockey scene,
and hosting a racing roundtable.
This is sports.
This is news.
This is everything you need to know about the future.
This is the Scoutin Session.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to have you here this Wednesday. This is our 7th episode of the Scoutin Session, where we talk the up-and-coming sports stars and highlight young standout performances at the professional level. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. My name is Ella Wolter-Sánchez, and as always, I'm joined by
Jordan Talley
and Noah Reed.
And we're just going to get right into it with our standard first little segment of Who's on Deck. So I'm back to covering baseball players, and this week we have Roman Anthony, who is an outfielder with the Boston Red Sox. And with spring training in full swing, we're really getting a good view of the newest prospects to hit the market and their capabilities. All eyes are kind of on that rather than the teams. And for those who don't know, spring training happens before the regular season starts for about over a month, and it happens in only 2 places in the country. Here, called the Cactus League, and Florida, called the Grapefruit League. Spring training does not count towards the team records in terms of wins and losses, and it's a way for prospects to play, teams to try out new techniques, and for teams to just get in the swing of play. Baseball is very much one of those sports where you have to be hot to be good, so this is a good way to just get that flame ignited. And it also allows for not only the teams to try out things, but Major League Baseball. MLB tries out a lot of things in the minor leagues because not many people pay attention to those, and that's kind of where they can test things out for the league as a whole. That's where they tested out a lot of the things to make the game shorter, a lot of the new rules they've implemented in the last few seasons to try to speed it up a bit. A big one this year to hit spring training is automatic pitches and strikes, and that is in 5 stadiums in Arizona. I'm not sure how many in Florida, but basically there's a lot of drama with umpires because obviously it's a small strike zone and it's very subjective most of the time unless when the player doesn't swing what is a ball and what is a strike. So the team is allowed, I think, 2 tries to sort of challenge the umpire. It's not used on every ball and strike, but it's sort of a challenge, and then that's when the computer says if it's a ball or if it's a strike. I know my grandparents went to one in Goodyear, which is one of the places that they are implementing that, and they used it twice, I believe, against the home plate umpire. So it's a very interesting way to kind of see how, balls and strikes are being counted, and that's being implemented in spring training right now. So in a normal MLB season, you have what is called a 40-man roster, which is how many players the team is allowed to have, quote-unquote, on one-time contract. And that's normally about 25 active players and then 15 other players in various spots, whether that's on the injured list, helping out in spots that need to be filled because players are on the injured list, or in the minors. It also counts for contracted players in the minors. And then during spring training, a 40-man roster does not exist, so the big names only play for 3 or 4 innings, if that, and it gives others and prospects time to shine. So currently all eyes are on MLB prospects, and one of those prospects is Roman Anthony, like I said earlier, an outfielder for the Red Sox. He's also called their phenom and is arguably the best prospect in baseball, according to several articles. He is also only 20 years old, which is very young to be considered this highly in baseball. It's a very long process. You have the farm system. A lot of people go to college before they hit the farm system, and then coming up to the MLB, it's very much something that you're in for a very long time. So 20 years old is very young to be considered this highly by so many people. And he was the number 1 prospect until the international trade that we talked about a few episodes back. And Suzuki, who went to the Dodgers, took over that number 1 spot. So he's currently the number 2 prospect in MLB. In 2024, he had a .291, .396, .498 batting line, meaning he had a .291 batting average, .396 on-base percentage, and a .498 slugging percentage. Lots of data and numbers in baseball, along with 18 home runs, 65 RBIs, and 32 doubles. He started off 2024 with the Double-A Portland Sea Dogs, and then moved up to the Triple-A Worcester Red Sox. They have the weirdest names in the farm system. And moving back historically, Anthony was drafted in 2022, so only 3 years ago, and was selected 79th overall by the Boston Red Sox. He signed and received a $2.5 million bonus out of high school. In his senior year in 2022, he batted .520 with 52 hits, 14 doubles, 10 home runs, and 40 RBIs. He was named the Gatorade Florida Player of the Year and Mr. Florida Baseball. And after his sophomore year of high school, he was already committed to play at Ole Miss. They're currently ranked number 24, so a pretty good team in the college baseball world. Today, he was one of only 20 invited to the Red Sox spring training for the first time this year after just 2 years in the farm system. So obviously he did not end up playing at Ole Miss and just went straight to the farm system of the Red Sox. So now he kind of has to prove himself now that he has an invitation to spring training to make the 40-man roster cut. But a lot of eyes are on him and the Red Sox as they seek to be higher than third in the AL East. They've kind of been a medium-ish team ever since winning the World Series after a very long hiatus a few years back, and they're approaching their 125th season as a team, which is crazy. And he has been quoted by Jeff Passan, who is kind of like the Woj of baseball, as a fixture to Boston's offensive problems, so hopefully he's able to prove himself. But I just thought this was an interesting story, especially with spring training coming up. He's one of, he's at the top of the list that everybody's kind of looking at prospect-wise now that spring training is in full swing.
Yeah, well, going back to what you said kind of towards the beginning about teams having to get hot, there is no better place than Arizona to get hot, as we have come to find out. Not too bad so far, but I don't know. It's been 80 degrees. It's been nice. I don't know if you guys have checked out the Shade Garden, but I've sat down there and come home. Okay. So we're enjoying it. We will probably be complaining in a few weeks down the road.
I'm already complaining. I walked to Fry's yesterday when it was 90 at 1 o'clock. Probably not the best time to walk there, and I was sweating. I don't really get, obviously, I don't get how players play a lot of sports, but something like baseball that's a summer sport. I don't get how people, because spring training, those are just, simple fields. They're not as complex as Chase Field, having an indoor sort of stadium. But, I don't know how players do it.
Hey, I'm not complaining. It's it was just snowing back in Washington a week or so ago. So the fact that it's 80, 90 degrees out right now, I'm having a grand old time. It feels like summer to me a little bit. It's starting to stress me out homework-wise, but whatever. But anyways, back to this. I thought it was kind of cool. You said they're testing out a new rule for challenging.
Yes.
That's
balls
awesome.
And strikes. Yeah.
That's awesome. Because there's so much, especially important balls and strikes, that I feel like a lot of the time people can get mad at or yell at it if they think it's misjudged or whatever.
It's definitely the reason a lot of coaches crash out.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think challenging is awesome. I just think that's a great rule in sports, personally, because, challenge it. If you think it's wrong, challenge it, and if it's not, you're going to get Do you know what the repercussions are if your challenge is wrong?
I think it's just
nothing?
No, it's sort of, I don't know if challenge is the right word to use, but it is a challenge.
It's just go to extra review.
Yes, and it goes review by a robot. It's not normally when baseball things go into review, they call into New York, I think it is, where they have a team of people that looks at it. This is all done by a robot and by and it's there, and it's within 2 seconds you know what it was. So it's very interesting and very interesting use of technology.
Yeah, I also like you said, preseason little tournaments or whatever, trying out new rules that could be implemented in the regular season. I know the NHL just did that with the Four Nations. They did a 3-2-1 point system instead of the 2-1-0 point system that they've been on, which is just wins and losses or whatever. But it's cool to see. It'll be cool to see this in actual practice before, because I just think every sport you should be able to challenge, because refs and umps aren't always right.
No, nobody's perfect.
Yeah, and then going back to Roman, $2.5 million, I believe, as a senior in high school. I would have killed to have that cash. Unfortunately, not the case. But, here's the thing that strikes me about this young man is the fact that he is putting his money where his mouth is, essentially. He's backing up all of the praise, the accolades with cold, hard facts. And I'm a stats guy. So when you read off all those stats about, his RBI, his slugging percentage, his base percentage, my face lit up because I'm like, okay, he's in the numbers. He's up there. He's got the talent. So, yeah, I mean, hey, it's cool to see for sure.
Yeah, and that's something I love about baseball is obviously every sport has like its own stats, but there's stats for every single there's stats I still don't understand, and it's just super cool to see, and he's definitely backed up those stats. But now to hit the ice with Jordan.
All right, we're changing it up a little bit. We're used to the West, Northwest. We're bringing it Midwest, Midwestern North area this week with our prospect Ilya Protas. The 18-year-old has made quite an impression on the first season of the OHL, which is the Ontario Hockey League, and the Canadian Hockey League. The 2006-born forward out of Vitebsk, Belarus, was named OHL Player of the Week this week when he scored 5 goals, had 9 assists, and for 14 points and a plus-minus of +5 in just 4 games played. So let's take it back a little bit. What is the OHL? We've talked about the Western Hockey League, but what is the OHL? The OHL is the Ontario Hockey League and is a league within the Canadian Hockey League, which is the sanctioned, bigger organization over the WHL and stuff. The CHL, or Canadian Hockey League, is the umbrella organization that oversees the Ontario Hockey League, the Western Hockey League, and the Quebec Maritimes Junior Major Junior Hockey League.
Wow, what a mouthful.
A mouthful.
They're saying that 5 times fast.
Literally. And then when people think about the CHL, they usually think about the OHL instead of the WHL kind of come up a little bit as of recently, and with the QMMJHL, the Quebec Maritime Major Junior League.
Goodness.
Sidney Crosby came from there. Lots of stuff, but people usually think of the London Knights, where a lot of superstars come from, like Mitch Marner of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Patrick Kane, Chicago Blackhawks legend and Detroit Red Wing. He has I think 3 cups with the Blackhawks. Matthew Tkachuk of the Florida Panthers, who just won a Stanley Cup with Florida last year and just represented the 4 nations, the U.S. and the 4 nations. And then people like Jonathan Tavares, who was the Toronto Maple Leafs captain until this past season. The OHL is made up of 20 teams all across the Ontario province in Canada. And then you also have, of course, players like Wayne Gretzky and Connor McDavid, who also came from the Ontario Hockey League. But back to Protas. Protas is a 6'5", 201-pound left winger who plays for the Windsor Spitfires. And just for everyone out there, that is a massive guy to be playing a forward position. Usually hear those guys playing defense on the blue line. Yes, there are bigger guys playing forwards, but not like him. So before coming to North America, Ilya represented Team Belarus on a couple of national teams before joining the Des Moines Buccaneers of the USHL for the 2023-2024 hockey season. During that season, he put up 51 total points in 61 games played with 14 goals and 37 assists. So pretty decent year for him, but nothing like he has been this year. Then last year, he entered the CHL import draft where he went number 3 overall to the Windsor Spitfires. And this season, in 52 games played, Protas has a total of 98 points, 41 goals, and 57 assists with the Spitfire. Massive upgrade from last season, actually putting up those numbers, especially this is only his first year in the CHL, which a lot of guys usually take a second to adjust. But he is only 18, so he has a couple more years of eligibility. In his last 4 games, like I mentioned, he had 14 points, 5 goals, and 9 assists. But in his last 10 games, he has 9 goals and 14 assists for a total of 23 points. That is 2.3 points per game in his last 10. He currently sits 4th in points and 3rd in goals in the OHL, the whole Ontario Hockey League, as well as 2nd on this team in points, just one behind his teammate Liam Greentree, who's right wing with 99, and second in assists as well as first in goals. Protas was draft eligible last year and went in the third round, 75th overall to the Washington Capitals. And before the 2024 draft, here's what elite prospects had to say about Protas. Without foot speed as an advantage, Protas developed a refined playmaking and off-puck game. He provides short support for his teammates, scans in advance, and instantly moves the puck upon reception. If he's not connecting with the one-touch or redirection passes, he slows to the draw and defense before slipping the puck through. The Windsor Spitfires currently sit in the second in the Western OHL Conference under the London Knights with a record of 39-13-4 and have clinched that playoff spot. So, I mean, they said, he's a big guy. He doesn't necessarily have to be super fast to be making these playmakers, but obviously he's making them work somehow. So, yeah. Anything on Ilya?
Well,
move on
I mean,
to this last.
I liked the progression here. I like what you touched on in, the comparison where he jumped from, the 14 goals to the 41. The inverting of the numbers, always love that. And, just seeing the career trajectory. I liked how, he's represented Belarus a couple of times. That always stands out to me. I was watching some program. I forgot what it was. It just popped up and I kind of tuned into it. It was about, how in the 70s, 80s, 90s and that era, there was an emphasis on more national competitions between different, nations, between different teams that really allowed the best of the best players to shine. I know obviously we have the Olympics, but I think you and I touched on this a little bit last week, and I'd be curious to get Ella's opinion on this. Like, should there be more of an emphasis on getting international competition between nations like the U.S. and Canada like we saw last week?
I definitely think, I only have a baseball perspective on this really, but I definitely think it's interesting to see, that's what I was going to talk about with Protas, but I just think it's interesting the teams that he has played for and that he did play for, another team before he came here, and I think that's so cool that, you have that experience and because obviously every country not only has their different customs, but it's the same sport, but they have different ways that they play it, and the other, countries that are big for baseball are Japan and, the Dominican Republic, and players only really play there in the winter or if they're from there. Nobody really goes, or, if they've aged out of the MLB or they're not really getting any contracts, then they go over there. But I definitely think, in baseball, that international, it would have to be completely reframed the way that the draft is, but that international players should be allowed to be in the draft because, like we said, or a few episodes ago, we were talking about international players, and in baseball, it's only international signing day, and that counts for the rest of the world. There's one day where there's a big signing day for the rest of the world, so it'd be cool, maybe it'd be two different drafts, maybe not combining those, because obviously the age at which, everybody coming out of the Dominican Republic and everything, these are 17-year-olds, and 17-year-olds in America are still in high school and are not entering the draft. So it would probably have to be two different things, but I definitely think that there's a lot of things to be gained by international players. Look at the biggest person in the MLB right now, Shohei Ohtani. I don't think that there would be that much publicity on the MLB if it weren't for his presence in it. I definitely think his flair has brought a lot of people into the sport. So I definitely think that there is a lot to gain from having international players in a league. And I think, Ilya? Yeah. They should, they should be praised and they should be allowed. And I feel like you see this more in sports like hockey, but not necessarily baseball and I guess football too. But international players, I think there's a lot to be gained by them.
All right. And just one last final section. We can't go 1 week without talking about Gavin McKenna here on the show. He has also still been on a heater. He hit the 100-point mark this past week. He now sits at 106 points in the WHL. But cold water's a little bit tumultuous waters, I guess, when he is facing suspension for a big slash he did last Friday. He is waiting his hearing a little bit, see how long, it's undetermined. But yeah, that was all over Hit the Ice this week.
Yeah, you showed us the video earlier. Pretty crazy, but we're going to roll on into the racing roundtable. This week, we're going to highlight third-generation race car driver Gabe Somers of Plover, Wisconsin. His number 15 Fury chassis has become one of the most well-known across the late model circuits of the Midwest region. His family's been involved in racing for over 40 years. But Scott Somers, Gabe's father, has actually never raced himself. So this is actually interesting. Normally you don't see this in racing. You see the father, son, grandson. This actually skipped a generation. So his connection to the sport actually comes from his grandfather, Rich Somers, who was inducted to the Wisconsin International Raceway Circle of Fame back in 2019. Pulled up a picture of that number 15 car that his grandfather raced. It was surrounded, and I mean surrounded by trophies. So today, like I said, he honors his grandfather by running the same iconic number 15 made famous by his grandfather. And Gabe's career began at 2014 at age 11 when he competed in the Bandolero Car Series. By the time his second season was over in that division, guys, he was second in points. So after competing in the Midwest Truck Series for 13 at the age of 13, he was interviewed by USA Today's network in Wisconsin, and he said to reporter Morgan Road that, quote, "Someday I want to race a super late model. I'd like to race all over the country, and it's my goal to continue racing for the rest of my life. Each time I go out there, I try to get better with each race." Guys, I'd say that Gabe has met and shattered his own expectations now at 21 years old. Let me just rattle off to you some of his accomplishments. Where do I start? Let's go with this. I mean, second youngest to ever win Rookie of the Year honors in the ASA Midwest competition. He did it at 16. He also finished runner-up in the Midwest Tour standings between 2020 and 2022. He's now a multi-time winner in the Midwest Truck Series as well that we touched on earlier. He also won the 2022 Alive for 5 Super Late Model Championship. And now, Jordan, you kind of touched on the different regional aspects of racing. I know I've touched on West Coast versus East Coast, and I haven't given the love to the Midwest. So today, we're going to talk about that, and starting with the ASA series. What the heck's the ASA? So this is going to be our fast fact of the week. We've mentioned the Cars Tour, the NX Legends, NASCAR Mexico Series. What about the ASA? Well, let's break it down for you. It was founded back in 1968. It stands for the American Speed Association, formerly a national touring series throughout the 90s. Many of the best short track drivers built a career racing here. Currently hosts the Stars National Tour, the Midwest Tour, the Southern Super Series, and the all CRA sanctioned series events. Guys, drivers like Rusty Wallace, Mark Martin, Ty Majeski, all champions of the sport, mind you, in the NASCAR ranks, cut their teeth racing in the ASA. But now, going back to Somers, he's a 2-time defending champion of the Midwest Tour Series through his work with crew chief Travis Sauter, which, doing my research, I wanted to double check. I was like, okay, I know there's a couple of famous Sauters who have raced in NASCAR, and kind of like Gabe, it's got that family connection. And that's one of the things I love about racing is there's a big emphasis on family. And, in a sport like baseball or hockey, where maybe you're not able to have your dad involved or your brothers involved. A lot of his crew is his family, his closest friends, and that's something that's really cool. So Travis is another member of a family rooted in racing. He is the grandson of racing legend Jim Sauter and the nephew of Craftsman Truck Series champion Johnny Sauter. Wisconsin, again, guys, continues to produce some of the best drivers in the nation. Matt Kenseth, NASCAR Cup Series champion, Sam Mayer, Parker Retzlaff, Luke Fenhouse, and Derek Kraus. All of those guys are competing in either the Truck or Xfinity Series. And Gabe's already kicked off his 2025 campaign, making a 1,400-mile trek down to New Smyrna Speedway, competed in the Clyde Hart Memorial 200, as well as the Orange Blossom 100. Beautiful names, by the way. Featuring some of the best drivers the sport has to offer. Finished 7th in the first race after overcoming some right front damage that he sustained in an early incident. And in the Orange Blossom 100, Gabe charged from 14th to 3rd by the time the checkered flag flew, and already sits 3rd in the ASA Stars National Series Tour. So it takes all those regional events, lump them together, and you have your national points. Different events, different tracks. So he'll have his actually first Midwest Tour race is going to be May 4th at the Madison International Speedway. He'll begin his quest for a 3rd straight champion in that championship in that series. And if he's successful, guys, he'll tie Casey Johnson for the second most championships all time and only sit one behind Ty Majeski for the most consecutive championships, one in a row. Ty Majeski blew the competition away, winning 4 straight. So he's already established a successful program at GSR Racing and has a long career ahead of him. And fun fact today, guys, I realized I've actually seen them race. I was a participant in Bill McAnally's driver development program that he ran back in 2020, 2021, and that was raced at All-American Speedway, Roseville, California, and I was going through today's events, and I just stumbled through some of these photos, and I was like, wait a minute, hold on, this guy was, and I started reading articles, I was like, wait, Gabe not only raced, but won at this track, and it just completely had slipped my mind. So he's definitely, turning it up on the ranks, and it's just so cool to see. What are your guys' thoughts? I know we're kind of crunched on time. It was a packed show today.
Yeah, I think it's really cool, like, not only with this, but Keenan, I believe, the one we talked about 2 weeks ago on your segment, who's, his dad, obviously he was really young, or is really young, and his dad was there helping him, and I just think the family aspect is super cool, and the fact that you're able to have your family not only, like, have generations, but have your family there to help you, and I think that's really cool and a really unique part of racing and a cool part of his story specifically.
For sure. Like you said, the family aspect is really cool to have in racing because, like you said, hockey, the most you're going to get is you're playing with maybe a brother or a cousin. When it comes to the family aspect, you're never going to play with your dad or stuff like that. But that's just awesome. And it always is just mind-blowing to me when there's just like these super, super young drivers that have been stellar since you said he won Rookie of the Year when he was 16. I mean, I'm not driving these crazy cars. Yeah, I got my license at 16, but I'm not driving these I'm like racing these cars, and they've been doing this for before that. So it's like kind of crazy to just see, and especially like, I'm familiar with F1, so like a lot of these F1 guys have been driving these crazy cars since they were like 14, 13 years old, and the same goes for this kind of racing as well. So it's just crazy to see such young guys get behind the wheel like that.
Yeah, and guess what, guys? We will be bringing a guest back here onto the show for the Scoutin' Session next week. Won't spoil who it is, but it is another up-and-coming racer. But that's going to do it today, right, Ella?
Yes, thank you for listening to today's edition of the Scoutin' Session. My name is Ella Wolter-Sánchez, alongside
Jordan Talley
and Noah Reed.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.